Welcome to Lead Her Higher, a podcast sharing the stories of women transforming education through leadership. I'm your host, Emily McLean. Today's conversation is with Sandra Chow, Deputy Director and Director of Learning at Nanjing International School. Our conversation is all about leading with courage, navigating leadership across cultures, and empowering women to step forward into leadership opportunities. You're going to love her insights on globally minded leadership, balancing vision with practicality, and the power of finding your allies. Let's get into it. Let's start with her story. Sandra, welcome to the Lead Her Higher podcast. It's such a privilege to have you here, and I really appreciate you taking time all the way from Nanjing.
Thank you. It's really great to be a part of this. I've always loved hearing stories, and you bringing together different women leaders who are sharing their stories is really exciting.
Thank you. And Sandra, our paths have crossed so many times in the last few years in the international world of education and as Apple Distinguished Educators and being fellow Canadians. And so I'm really glad that we have this time together today. So let's begin right at the beginning. Let's hear a little bit about your journey. What brought you to where you are today in your leadership?
I was just thinking when you were asking this question that a lot of it actually starts more. I was reflecting as a child. I grew up in Canada and Ottawa, where it wasn't very diverse. And so I was just comparing my leadership and when I actually started to take on leadership roles. And if I really, really thought back, it would be in Chinese school where everyone looked similar to me. And I found that I would always have this dual life where I'd have my regular school with different friends and where I was usually one or two of the only Asians in school. And then I'd have Chinese school, which happened every Saturday morning. Everyone was Chinese speaking there. And at my regular school, I would be a lot more quiet and I would be the smart one. I guess if you could see leadership in that sense. And then in Chinese school, I was loud, I was bossy, I was telling people what to do, and I would be the class leader. But it wasn't really until high school in my regular school that I became a part of a leadership in our orchestra, our band. And that's when I started to gain confidence outside of just my Chinese circle. And then when I went to university and I saw that there were so many more Chinese people, I went to University of Waterloo in Canada and I was just amazed at how many Asians there were. And I suddenly began to see such a diverse world, and my confidence grew so much more. And so, my first year, I was part of the Accounting Association as secretary. I became president. I became the Frosh leader. I just became much more confident and coming into my own once I was there.
It's so interesting that our childhood has such an impact on the leaders that we become. And I loved hearing about just how you were different in different contexts and what that brought out in you. And thinking about now as you step into your school leadership journey, was there a defining moment that really shaped how you approach your leadership in schools?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's all about your role models and who you look up to. Actually, this summer, when I went back to Canada, I attended a memorial service of one of those leaders who was just super influential in my life. And so I started out my career as an accountant, but just realized very quickly that that was not for me and that I really enjoyed being an educator. And so when I became a teacher, my first job was at the Toronto District School Board, and a principal had sought me out and hired me as one of their beginning teachers, and her name was Cheryl Page. And she was just an amazing principal, innovative. She had this can do attitude, super caring, especially for the students, and was always seeking new opportunities and would always encourage you and see the strengths in you and tell you that you could do it. And so in my first year, I remember being launched into almost really quickly into a research project with a professor at York University who later on I just developed such a strong relationship with and did many, many research projects with. We're presenting very quickly to other schools and around the board. And around Ontario. And also, we did like a presentation with the ministries of education around Canada. It's just within a short period, even as a young teacher, my principal had helped us to develop leadership skills and modeled that for us. And that was just really influential as I began my journey as an educator.
When you speak of Cheryl, she saw something in you that you hadn't yet seen in yourself and really brought out the best in you. And I think it's such an important reminder that as leaders, we have that responsibility to do that for others as well.
Yeah, just even going to her memorial service this summer and hearing the different stories. I mean, that was just my story, but there's so many that she had impacted, and from students to other educators, and hearing their stories and how she touched them was just a great reminder of the impact that you can have as a leader.
Certainly sounds like she's left a legacy and that she's touched so many that will continue to lead on in her honor. And we know that leadership definitely has complexities and there's so many intricacies of being a leader. No day is truly the same, and we face so many challenges as leaders. And as women, we also experience some unique ones in leadership roles. Have there been any that you've faced along the way, any challenges, and how have you navigated those?
Yeah, I think being different always was a big challenge for me. When you're in a space and you feel different and you look different and your thinking is different, it creates a barrier and a challenge that of uncertainty, and all those personal barriers that you face surface and accentuate so much more. Things like your lack of confidence, imposter syndrome, and or am I thinking correctly, or why do I think differently? And does that mean I'm wrong? All of those become a lot more intense in feeling when you're
Mm.
different. And I have to do a lot of self talking to be able to overcome those personal barriers. And also a lot of reflection over the years. I think being older helps, being more experienced helps. Having talked to other women leaders who have the same feelings has helped as well. But when you walk into a room and they're all people who look different, or our genders are different, they say things that are different from you, and your opinion will be different, then all those things come up and you doubt yourself.
One of the things that I have always thought when I am in the rooms that are different than maybe myself is that there is this responsibility of bringing a unique perspective, a voice that isn't at the table. And so I hope that you know that your voice is always one that matters, no matter what room you're in.
Yeah, and I think as with experience that those are some of those self-talks that I have to go through. Just what's fresh in my mind going back to Canada, a lot of my close friends would be people who are like me, Chinese Canadians, who I feel very comfortable with. And when I'm with them, I don't have to do any self-talk. I can just be myself and just share my voice. And you can feel that difference when you feel the difference between being yourself and having to self-talk yourself in a situation. Then, and if you're in those self-talk situations frequently, it's just tiring.
I could totally appreciate that. Knowing that you have those strategies, though, and that you are able to do that is something I think that others need to know as well, so that they're doing that same thing when they're feeling that way. Leadership so often requires us to step into the unknown, even when we're not sure how it will turn out. Have there been some real risks in your journey or leaps of faith that have been really pivotal in your career?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely switching from accounting to teaching was a big one, but it was so thrilling going into something that you're just passionate about. So when you know and you're in this space where you feel that your strengths and your characteristics and your personality align and your interests align, then it makes those leap of faith exhilarating. But I was just thinking of another one where I had taught in Taiwan, and then we had, as a family, moved back to Canada. And I was at that time working for an organization called TVO, and I was in a role called a teacher liaison. So it was more of an instructional curriculum role. And this opportunity came up in China again. And my husband and I have always been interested in being overseas again. And especially with our children, we wanted them to have this international experience. And when this position came up, it was a director role, which I had never done before. And at the same time, I was reading Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In. And it wasn't as if the book itself was amazing for me, but there was this one line in the book that was continually circulating in my mind. And it was that when women apply for jobs, they often need to check off 100% of the job description. Whereas when men apply for jobs, oftentimes 30% of the job description they'll see and apply for the job. And I was thinking to myself, well, that's just crazy. Why would you even apply? And so when this director role came up and I looked at the job description, and again, I was just ticking things off, and I was like, wow, I can like do 70% of those job. And then so that line in Sheryl Sandberg's book just was just repeating in my mind. And my friends were saying, you should just apply. So I did. And yeah, and so that was for me, it was a risk or a leap of faith that I thank Sheryl Sandberg for, because I did read her book and it triggered me to apply. And I remember very distinctly when I was interviewing with a headhunter, it was just a really interesting interview. Um, and an hour in, he goes, your resume didn't sound like you had the skills or the expertise to do this job, but I interviewed you anyways, and I'm speaking to you for an hour. So that says something. Was like, I don't know if I can take that as a compliment or a diss, but thank you.
Well, I would take it as a compliment. It really highlights that how some of the biggest growth comes from when we're taking those brave decisions and those leaps of faith. Thinking about other women who are very capable like yourself, but maybe a little bit more hesitant to take that step forward. You had Cheryl's words of advice kind of playing in your mind. What other words of advice do you have for women who are, a little bit hesitant to take that step forward and take that leap?
Yeah, I mean, definitely finding allies. I think even though I was reading Sheryl Sandberg's book and that line kept circulating, I don't know if I would have applied if I didn't have allies, people who are your cheerleaders and who know you well and can give you confidence. I know even in applying for my current role, it was a role that I hadn't done before. I had other people who would talk to me and say, yeah, you should definitely apply for it. And you have those skill sets. And when you have other people give you confidence and who have worked with you and can see the strengths and value that you bring into various roles and positions, that helps give you confidence. And that you can, when you're doing those self talks and you're getting out of those cycles of feeling like you're not good enough, or that you don't have the confidence or the ability, then you can draw on those words of wisdom or encouragement from your allies and people that you work with and that you respect to be able to give you strength. So I think find allies and focus on your strengths and build those strategies of positive self-talk.
I love that you highlight the importance of relationships and building that community around you. I think it's so important to have that supportive community for the good times, the challenging times, and all the times in between. And as expats and international educators, we know it's such a privilege to live in host countries, to experience a wide range of cultures, and be in schools that just in your classroom has such a diverse community. Having led in international context yourself, what have you really learned about how leadership translates across cultures and the different countries that you've been in?
Well, I can't say I've been in many countries. I've been in Canada, in China, and Taiwan, and there's a lot of similarities in that. But even within China, I've learned that there's a lot of different cultures. Within those cultures or subcultures that are different and different nuances. For example, as a Chinese born Canadian, my subculture and my way of thinking is going to be different from somebody who was raised and born in China. And then within China, I've worked in a school that's a bilingual school, and I've worked in an international school, and those cultures are different as well. And so I find that people have different personalities, different ways of leading, and expectations are different. And so it's helpful to reflect on that to observe, to listen, to hear stories so that you can gain a better understanding of that context and hopefully narrow those expectation gaps. I think being a chameleon is helpful so that when in Rome, be like the Romans, because you need to adapt as a leader to be able to build relationships, build trust, which are foundations, and then be able to lead and guide. So I think those are the things that I think I've learned being internationally.
What you're speaking of really shows how leadership is so universal and yet deeply contextual. And, education in the world has also shifted a lot in the past decade, and leaders have had to adapt along the way. You've seen these changes happen firsthand. What do you believe globally minded leadership requires today that perhaps wasn't really emphasized about 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think that intercultural competency is really important. I have to say that I saw this trajectory where there was a huge emphasis on being able to be global citizens. And of late, it's kind of worrisome that we might be digressing and feeling nervous about using words like diversity or inclusion. But I think it's still very, very necessary if we want to be global citizens and we want to be able to relate with people around the world rather than just be isolated within our own context and in our own bubbles. My hope is that we are still going to be moving around different parts of the world and not just resorting back into our own countries. And if we can have more leaders who can impart that important need, then I think that trickles down, especially as educators, to our students who are our future leaders. And that's where I think our emphasis needs to be on is just empowering our future leaders to be able to have those intercultural understandings, to think about the world beyond their local context or their immediate context, to be able to understand different perspectives. I mean, we're both in this IB world, and I actually really love that line in the IB mission statement that other people with their different perspectives could also be correct. And I think if we can have those viewpoints as leaders, and if our younger generation can also have that viewpoint, then there's hope for our future society and for our future generations. And I think that's really important.
We definitely need to keep moving forward. There's so much work still to be done in this space, and we owe it to our students to not step back. Mhm.
Mhm.
And one of the challenges that leaders often face is also holding on to bold visions while also trying to make sure that the day to day realities are addressed. And you've spoken about courage and risk and leading across cultures, all of which require big picture thinking and then grounded action at the same time. So, when you think about balancing vision and practicality, how do you keep both in view when you're doing your own work?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm currently teaching business management course, and we were on this one unit on motivation. And as I'm teaching the kids, I found myself reflecting on my own leadership a lot. I'm thinking, oh, wow, this is actually really useful for my own practice. And one of the motivation theories that came up was Maslow's hierarchy of need. When you're thinking about the day to day. And this rang true especially during COVID when people were launched into an environment that they weren't used to and needing those. And we had talked a lot about that, I think, during that time where people need to Maslow before they bloom. And I even shared that with the students. But foundationally, people need to feel secure. They need to feel like the day to day is functioning well. And that gives them safety and it gives them a sense of security and emotionally as well as physically that the day to day does need to run smoothly. And once you do that, then people have the capacity to vision and think about the strategy and what that looks like. So it's important, I think, as a leader to be able to make sure that you're monitoring that well-being of your team. And I tend to be on the balcony thinker. I love staying on the balcony, but I know that it's important to be on the dance floor because if everything on the ground isn't running well, then people can't think blue skies. People can't think about strategy. So I think it's important to keep that in mind.
it really goes to you have to have those systems and structures in place to be able to have that creativity to really have that visioning.
Yeah, and actually, I just thought of something else. While not everyone will be able to be on the balcony with you all the time, coming back to those allies or critical friends that you can have those conversations with helps you to just keep fresh so that when you know everyone else is ready, then you're ready to kind of launch with those visionary or strategic aspects of leadership that you might want to focus on a little bit more. So I think while you might not be able to talk strategy and vision with your team members all the time because they're not at that place yet, then being able to find others who you can talk with to make sure that you're ready to go when you can talk to your team members about that is also important.
And you need those allies on the dance floor as well. So
Hmm.
those connections can help you no matter what you're looking at.
Hmm.
So on Lead Her Higher, we always like to pause and recognize a woman who's helped shape our own journeys because we know that none of us rise to leadership on our own. So thinking about your own path, who has had a meaningful impact on your leadership journey and how did she influence the way that you lead?
So I would say if I was to pick one, it would definitely be Cheryl. She was a mentor. She was like my work mom. Just she herself was a Prime Minister's Award winner in Canada as a principal. She would always cheer others on. As a school, we won so many awards, and she made it her mission to always, what award could I nominate this teacher for? And or this team for. She made so many connections. I think I see myself as a networker because very early on I was mentored by somebody who was a networker. We were in a public school where our learning needs were at the top of the city and we always had free stuff. We had free smart boards for every classroom. We had brand new Apple iMacs at that time. We would get grants to do projects and to do research. Education was just always exciting, and I always felt like I was on the cutting edge in terms of literacy or math. I remember going to a board sponsored pilot project promotion one time with my fellow colleague who also was a Prime Minister Award winner as a teacher, again, because Cheryl had nominated him. And the two of us were sitting in, and it was for a math project that the board was about to launch. And we sat in, we were listening to it. And at the end of it, we're like, nah, that's just too tiring. Our teachers would not buy it. And we went back to school and we told Cheryl because she had sent us to scope it out. We told Cheryl our thought. She's like, what? No, there's no way we're not going to do it. And sure enough, we did it. And I remember at the end of the 2 years of that pilot project, me and that principal, we were laughing and we're like, can you believe we had turned this down? It is amazing. And we were just laughing and thinking how amazing Cheryl was and just had foresight because it was an amazing pilot project. We all got professional development throughout the year sponsored by the board, and it was amazing professional development. And we saw our students increase in their math leaps and bounds. It was a amazing revolutionizing program for us. And we had turned it down going and thinking, oh, that's just too much.
Well, good thing that Cheryl knew better.
And I mean, even after I left the school, she was somebody I continued to go to. She was actually down the street. She was my neighbor. She had just, I mean, there's so many stories of how she encouraged when I applied for these jobs. She was always writing my recommendation letters, or when I applied for my doctorate, again, my cheerleader, just so many things. And she was always interested in my stories, what I was up to, and telling me about others and their stories and what they were up to and cheering them on as well. Be Cheryl, Cheryl Page.
Well, she sounds like a true visionary. It's incredible how she shone the light on so many others and was always in their corner, it sounds like. And I know that you are that type of leader as well, always looking out for others and pushing them forward. So she lives
Mhm.
on in you for sure.
Yeah, and so many others.
So, as we close out our conversation, we do something a little bit lighter, a little bit of fun of just rapid fire and kind of go with your gut answers. What would be a small habit that really makes a big difference in your leadership?
I like going to conferences. So if I can go once a year to a conference and meet up with people outside of my day-to-day, I think it makes a big difference in my leadership. It empowers me. It gives me new ideas, fresh perspectives. I get to hear about what's going on with other people. I really find that that's a small habit that makes a big difference for myself.
I love that you're such a lifelong learner, and it's always great to network and bounce those ideas around with people that you don't get to on a day-to-day.
Mhm.
What's your current leadership motto or mantra that you go by?
I oftentimes feel like they ebb and flow between different ones. And so I love that you said, what's your current leadership mantra and motto? My husband's going to laugh, but I had just finished a 3-year doctorate and just moved into a new job last year. And so my mantra this year is to be fun, Sandra. And, when there's social activities at school, Thursday we had a charity bingo, and when people are like, "Are you going?" I'll be like, "Yeah, it's fun, Sandra. I'm going." So my husband keeps saying, "Stop saying that because people are going to have an expectation of what fun is, and you're not going to meet that expectation." But that's my current motto, fun, Sandra.
I think you've always been fun, Sandra. And also, congratulations on your doctorate. That is such an incredible accomplishment and something you should be very, very proud of.
Thanks. Yeah, I never realized how long what weekends could be and how many things you could do in a weekend.
So, fun, Sandra, what other fun things are you planning for your staff? What do you like to do with your team?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've been trying to think about being intentional with different people and how I can make connection with different people. So that's just more a personal aspect. So whether it be going out to dinner with somebody or going to a workout with another person or inviting another group to board game night, but just more because I tend to be more introvert. So those connections for me need to be more personal where I can hear stories and I can get to know people more. That's what I've been working on. It's a different way to build staff morale, I think, but just trying to be intentional about thinking about everybody on my team and staff, and then what is a way I can make connection with them in a more intentional way.
And I'm sure they really appreciate that time one on one with you as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes it's still a group, but just thinking about what would be fun for them.
Well, I know you're very thoughtful, and I'm sure they're having a great time with you. So, if you're going to one of those conferences that you love to go to once a year, and I know you present sometimes as well, what would be your pump up song before a big presentation?
Well, it usually is I'm not going to lose my shot. But I have to say, I mean, I've caught that K-pop Demon Hunter fever and the Golden song's pretty great.
It is a good one. Definitely very catchy right now.
Yeah. Yeah, especially I'm going up, up, up.
And so, finally, what does the phrase lead her higher mean to you?
I think community. I think I'm very influenced by community, and our school is a big community, and I pick environments where a community is a huge aspect. And when I think about lead her higher, there's that element of it's not about you, not it's not lead me higher, it's about leading her higher. It's that building of community of women leaders, of fellow cheerleaders who you can chat with, encourage, share stories with, hopefully help them grow as well and go up, up, up.
Sandra, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, for connecting others and spotlighting others in your own journey of leadership. Your reflections across cultures, your courage to take risks, and your wisdom in supporting other women leaders is truly inspiring. And I know your words will resonate with so many. And I'm just so grateful to spend time with you today. So thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for leading others higher.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Lead Her Higher. I hope Sandra's story has highlighted the power of connection, inspired you to take your next step with confidence, and encouraged you to lift others into the spotlight. Until next time, lead with courage, lift others up, and always lead her higher.